When I learned about this idea, I took it on as another filmmaking job. But as I learned more about it, I realized that this applies to everyone, and especially young adults, and that we have to be able to connect our lives and our systems, our human systems, to the environment. And the key is to learn more about it. As author Richard Louv writes, when people begin to consider the career possibilities of human restoration through nature, their eyes light up. Here is a positive, hopeful view of the human relationship with the earth, a way to make a living and a life.
Earth is an amazing planet, and that's because it's the only one we know that's alive, but also because we're a part of that life. We're the only ones in the whole universe that we know of that are alive and living on a living planet. Well, we all care about our individual lives, about how they're going to turn out, and we work towards making them the best we can be. These days, because of environmental trends such as climate change and also topsoil loss and loss of biodiversity, we need to factor that into our calculation about how our lives are going to turn out. We all want to make the world a better place, and I think this is especially true with young people.
From first grade and then all the way through college, you sit down in a classroom and you're told what you're supposed to think. You're told what you're supposed to know. You're expected to memorize and regurgitate it. So you're taught pattern identification and memorization.
Sometimes I see nonprofit organizations, volunteers coming in trying to educate the student body, and they have little success because the students really, it's not engaging enough.
And if you're looking at standardizing something for an entire state or for public education in general, you have to realize that you've got people coming from the ideology of, this is how it is and this is how it's always going to be. You've also got other people whose parents are very involved in this and they understand that, my kids might never see snow-capped mountains in their home state or whatever it might be.
So my question is, how are we going to create a better world? If we don't want to leave it to chance, what are we going to base it on? To address looming environmental trends, we need to create the so-called green economy, one that's in balance with our living world, not overwhelming it. But when young people start to explore how they might address environmental trends, a strange thing happens. They're often referred to environmental science courses of study and envision getting environmental jobs, but not much else.
Our school is teaching us enough to to make us all want to learn about, eco-sustainability or anything about climate change. For some kids, they never even get the chance to understand it because they're not either paying attention in class or the classes they take aren't going to be teaching that kind of stuff.
There's so much other life on this planet that we have to look out for, and if we're not learning that, I think it's just going to skip people's minds, and people aren't going to think about it as much because they don't know how to think about it.
Like climate crisis and all of the environmental degradation we're experiencing is going to affect everyone. Of course, it's going to affect marginalized people, people of color, poor people, way more than it's going to affect privileged people.
When you teach students sort of this banking method of approach to education, if you just tell them what to think, they see the world as something static that they need to adapt to. History is unchanging, science is unchanging. You memorize it, you execute it, and then you graduate, right? But when you teach students, right, to see the world as a problem that they have the creative ability and the power to solve, they see the world as mutable.
In this short video, we make the case that all careers are environmental. That is, all careers affect Earth's living systems in ways that are good and or bad or even regenerative. If we want a green economy that does not compromise or even destroy the health of living systems that support us, everything we do in that economy needs to be informed by basic understandings of how living systems work and how people fit in.
But I think it's imperative, to be honest. I think that that education should tie in all these pieces from biology and ecology and geology and geography and and hydrology. I mean, how water moves, is so important, right? So these are things that a lot of people don't have in their kind of repertoire of knowledge. And I think it really does a disservice to all of us to have people removed from that. I think people really need to understand that they are part of a much bigger system and everything that we do is connected.
The kids have to be able to touch it. They have to actually get out and see how it relates to their world. And so often science is taught from this 10,000 foot view. Then it just goes right past them. Who cares, right? I'm sure there's so many ways that you can teach environmental principles to an urban kid in Cleveland, so that they would actually care.
Well, how important I think that is? I think it's imperative for our survival. They have made this concept of caring for the earth or, sustainability, and then you have to go to school to learn that. But I feel like we all have that embedded just because of our connection with nature just through our evolution, So I feel like it's really just tapping into that a little bit. I think unfortunately what we're going to school to learn is very divisive, is very disconnecting, and it puts us on top of nature. It makes us masters of nature, and I think that's part of the disconnect, is even just the narrative that we're being exposed to in the educational space.
But it starts at the educational system. I don't think households, Ethan, are gonna teach children this. Just as I think there's households that don't teach children basic stuff that they should be teaching them now. There's a chance that the kids are going to get to college and mom and dad or grandma and grandpa or someone who was their guardian didn't teach them anything about a bank account and saving and budgeting, and they have to learn it on their own, or they took a class in college because they were a business major and they learned finance and then it clicked. But when you talk about the basic principles of living, who's going to teach you that as an individual? And in what grade do you start to learn that? So I do think it's really important that we have a basic foundation of living systems.
One of the things that we're really seeing is that we can't really pull humanity out of nature and out of the natural cycles. We need to learn how to fit within the cycles of Earth in a balanced, healthy way in order to keep the health of the earth moving forward. And we're in this crisis period right now where I think that the mindset for many centuries was that humans were somehow superior to other life forms or had some kind of right to rule the earth. But we're really seeing now that that's not a very healthy way to think or perspective to have.
The fun part about sustainability is that it really is an application of common sense. Oftentimes it's about finding the most efficient ways to do things, and other times it's about giving more than you're taking. That's the whole concept, right? Leave the planet in a better place than when you inherited it. I think that for youth in particular, for students that are coming up through the ranks right now, it's one of my favorite things to do is to engage with kids in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, on up through high school, where they are learning about themselves, but they're also learning about how they can apply their own passions to everything they're doing in their life. And if you can carry these environmental principles and really these common sense principles about how you should be as a human being, and you apply them to any job, any work you do all through your life. I've had 9 professions, 9 careers in my life, and I'm only 40 years old. So if you take those 9 careers, but in every single one of them I've been able to apply some kind of personal passion around sustainability.
In an analogous way, we need to nurture a widespread understanding of how Earth systems work and how our human systems, our human lives, fit in and are a part of this. As environmental trends become ever more serious, we need to ensure that young people that are about to embark on their careers receive training and perspectives to create a sustainable economy, a better world altogether. Luckily, healthy, sustainable visions of the future are not only possible, there are people all over the world who are working on examples, small to large, that are already realities. Some communities are living happy, healthy lives in a variety of ways, quite different than for most of us. And still others are thinking hard about how to weave these smaller examples and experiments together as larger systems.
So all these ideas really made me think what's actually being done. And as me and Martin reached out to hear more stories from businesses and people, we realized that so many people are already putting these ideas into practice.
So what I do now in the type of web development that I do is I specifically focus on data graphics. So I help scientists or anyone who has large data sets visualize their data. And scientists, environmental scientists or any kind of scientist now can collect so much data that they don't know what to do with it and they don't know how to look at it. And so that's my job, is to create graphics so that they can actually look at their data.
You know, I work in apparel and kind of gifts, a small boutique, and we were talking about kind of the understanding of where the things come from and what they're made of, and you know, the processes. And there's brands that are just leading the march right now in terms of sustainability and organics and, you know, cleaner water in their processes. And but then there are also, those are the bigger brands with lots of money and lots of backing. But then you can jump to a smaller company, like I was describing earlier, these little cutting boards that are literally charcuterie wood cutting boards, handmade, but made in Louisville, in the same town that we live in. So by supporting a small husband-wife team making these beautiful little pieces of art that can be used in your homes that will last forever, you recognize that it's not something that's been mass-produced somewhere else.
One of the things that I'm working on as a business and as just someone who's trying to help the environment is I'm trying to make a wax that is more economic, sustainable, with a less toxic and polluted runoff as a normal typical wax is. I thought of this idea because everyone has this common need in the ski industry for wax, and I've been researching on how terrible it is for the environment, how it pollutes the runoff, all of it.
So our entire model is based on the idea of providing education and experience in sustainable agriculture and food systems. So we own some restaurants locally that in 2010, we decided to buy the farm and start growing organic food that we could serve at the restaurants. And then we recycle the waste from the restaurants, bring it back here for our compost, and use that to fertilize the crops for the next year. So we grow, we have about 3 acres under production of a variety of different vegetables and fruits. And 100% of what we grow here goes to our 5 local restaurants. It makes up a pretty small amount of what we actually serve because we have a few really large restaurants. But we really try to focus on sort of heirloom varietals and specimen style foods that we can highlight on our menus to raise awareness about that food cycle and about trying to make sustainable local choices when you're going out or when you're dining or cooking or whatever. So we call the farm, it's an urban organic farm and education center.
And I work as FLOWS coordinator. And FLOWS stands for the Foundations for Leaders Organizing for Water and Sustainability, and it's a program that is housed in the Environmental Center at CU Boulder. And we partner up with Boulder Housing Partners, which is the local housing authority here in the city of Boulder. And what we do is we provide free water and energy upgrades for residents in low-income housing. But what's unique about FLOWS is that we go into people's homes with a different lens. So instead of coming in and highlighting the stuff that people are not doing, what we're doing is focusing on the leadership and the practices that people already have, and then building upon those practices, right?
So when you go to open the business, we had to plot out what we were going to buy, the equipment that we were going to buy, plot out the colors, plot out what ice cream recipes we wanted to introduce to the local neighborhood. In that process, we had a budget for cups and spoons and napkins. And going down that road, one of the most important things to me from day one was that we were going to be a company that had a very small trash footprint. And that meant investing in compostable cups, spoons, napkins, straws, and also making sure that things were recyclable. So on the customer side of the fence, if you came into our shop, whatever we handed you was always going to be either compostable or recyclable. You were never going to have a piece of trash in your hand.
I'm a firm believer that environmental education and sustainable knowledge and kind of that lens of sustainability is applicable to every business and every industry. It is especially applicable in the financial industry because you do have this real potential to drive market change. And it's not just, as I've talked about, with projects, it's also with investments. It's also with making sure that the members that you have, if you look at your thousands and thousands of members, if not more, they have the opportunity to engage with you on creating more sustainable infrastructure in their own life, as well as in community engagement and the social sustainability side.
And what we have installed here is an off-grid power system that is really accessible to anybody to build. But we have implemented some unique features to it. We're starting with a solar panel that's already been used for 5 years. And one of the ideas behind that, in coming years, many used solar panels that otherwise function will hit the market. Where to put them to use? It's going to be powering the shack for decades. We also have a battery that's based off of recycled lithium-ion cells.
So here's some of these principles of life, and the first one is so simple. We hear about it all the time, the circle of life. And this is one that people are already used to looking for, even in lower grades where we look at the life cycles of animals or the seasons. But we learn more and more about it as we spend time outside. This one here is about how the sun's energy drives the cycles of life, largely through photosynthesis. And so it's another basic concept which is pretty familiar to people. But as we look out and see the primacy of photosynthesis in our midst, we start to think about how the whole system is built on the sun's energy. And then we have heat coming off at energy transformations. And this becomes useful as we consider where we trap heat during the winter to keep ourselves warm and keep heat out of our houses during the summer. And then here's one that is definitely a principle of life. Membranes, especially important nowadays during this COVID era, but at the cell level, but also at the level of an organism with our skin, and then even between ecosystems and our Earth's atmosphere, membranes are really what allows life to continue in a healthy way. So all these things we learn about much more when we're outside. So our next step in the process of an all careers approach then is to say we take these and other principles of life and apply them to any and all careers. And this is a binder that we've started up making, and it highlights a number of businesses from carpet manufacturing to bread baking to the energy sector and transportation sector and then others, and saying that these are all environmental careers. And the way we make them environmental, i.e. green, is to understand how life works and how we fit in.
I mean, these are really some cool examples, and I know that my boss is trying to actually implement some different processes into where I work at a chocolate shop to be more sustainable, more green and part of a green economy with like biodegradable cups and different packaging, as well as the factory for our stores now has solar panels and is 100% solar run.
Interesante porque nos enseña cómo podemos ser más verdes y esto puede ser parte de nuestra sociedad y comunidad, no solamente en las ciencias, pero por ejemplo aquí tiene una compañía Moxie Bread y cómo pueden tener todo más sostenible en todas partes de la comunidad, no solamente en las ciencias, y siempre mantener la ecología en nuestra mente cuando estamos haciendo diferente.
In 2015, noted sustainability advocate David Orr delivered a speech at Claremont McKenna College in California, and it was entitled Hot Careers in a Warming World. He does believe that renewable energy is an indispensable career in a green economy, but advocated that all career paths should be part of addressing climate change.
I never think it's really taught on how things can be changed. I think it's heavily taught on what's happening now with global warming, but I don't think it's ever taught about what we can do to change it and all the different things we need to know to really make that switch into an environmentally sustainable economy and society.
I love like construction, and in the future I want to be an engineer. But during this, like there was a lesson where we had to build like a little shed, and in this shed we had two options: either make it the easy way, you know, use like listen to instructions and like actually make the shed like he told us to, or you can go your own way and actually maybe use like saving material, recycling, like things that actually help the environment. So it actually shows the kind of hard way, because, you know, I wanted to practice these ideas that I learned here in this internship and like actually using maybe in the future in some real like type of things, you know, like in the world that could help like the future. So why not practice it now, you know?
When you're trying to learn how to use a medium, you don't really know how it's going to behave, but you observe how it does behave, right? And then you learn that aspect of it, and it's not like you're learning it to regurgitate it on an exam. The things that you learn can be taken into a different context and used to solve that challenge. So in my work, the way that I do this is we observe the way that our body deals with microbes, right? So you have specialized immune cells, they engulf a foreign cell, and then they bombard it with really, really intense reactive chemical species. So what I do is I found a way to convert light energy into those same reactive chemical species. So we can just deliver them to the bacteria, and the way that we deliver it makes sure that it doesn't harm any of your host cells, any of your body cells. So we are, in essence, doing exactly what the immune system's already doing. We've observed that. We've observed that we can turn light energy to achieve the same phenomenon. So we've just taken it out of one context and put it in the context of medicine.
Although I'm the one behind the camera, these questions and ideas have still been on my mind, more so as I approach college and learn more about Martin's all-career concept. In developing this initiative video, my thoughts have become a part of this video's mission for inspiring people, especially younger adults my age, to create a sustainable world that will last and flourish.
And so I really like all careers because it's this both and, because it allows me, if in an ideal all careers economy, to pursue being both a writer but also an environmental justice advocate. And so I think that's just so important because it allows people to not only follow their key passions, but to also support the betterment of the environment and the conservation of our Earth. So.
And on a planet where the climate is changing very rapidly, it's very important for everyone to be able to reach the goals that they want, because we're going to need everyone's help. This is not one person's problem. This is humanity's problem.
Over the last few years in my home in Boulder County, Colorado, I've given programs about this idea to high schools and middle schools and public groups. And that's where this initiative was for a while. But recently there's been a number of organizations and people that have taken a strong interest in this. For instance, the Cottonwood Institute, which is based in Denver but works with middle school and high school students in Boulder County, really is already doing this in many ways and is adapting verbiage to reflect this very all careers approach.
Our capstone program is called Community Adventure Project, or CAP. So we have CAP classes that are available for middle school or high school students, and essentially they learn about different environmental topics. They get to experience different types of field days, say snowshoeing or hiking, and some of them are able to go on overnight camping trips, because we think it's really important for students to build a relationship with the environment, with the experiences that they might have in different places, with their fellow students, with their CAP instructors as well.
And I think that experience then can kind of translate, into any career that they go into, because they'll remember that experience from middle school or high school and say, oh yeah, I did learn about that. And whether that career is directly related to nature or the environment, doesn't matter. I mean, whether you're a lawyer, an engineer, a doctor, whatever, a restaurant owner, business owner, you can incorporate environmental sustainability into anything you do.
So right now we're developing and presenting presentations and workshops for students, parents, counselors, etc., just like we always have. But we're developing this video to get the idea far and wide. In addition, we're interested in developing more resources such as mentor programs, other videos, curriculum, career fairs, and other public gatherings to promote this all-careers approach to education. Well, we do live on and as a part of a living planet. And if we want to live good, healthy, happy lives that are consistent with our human nature and well into the future, we need to learn how to live with the life of this planet. The all-careers approach is a great way to get us started thinking about that and to learn the skills and stories and ideas that we need to accomplish that. If we do it now and start it off and make this the way that we approach our lives, then future generations too will be able to live happy, healthy lives on this beautiful planet Earth.
We all need to be more environmentally literate. And in preparation for any work we do and any career we go into, we need to be guided by solid understandings of how systems work and how we fit in. This is a big need in our education. But this video is not just a pitch for us to have more environmental education, more environmental science in school. That's important, but what's more needed is to gain experience on how to use this understanding to address problems, to connect what we learn to make the world a better place in whatever we do. So I want to have a healthy Earth that my kids can grow up on, and that their kids can grow up on. And I think that if we all understand a little bit about the beautiful planet we live on and how we fit into that, we might just be able to have that dream.